Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Can't Dig It. This topic of conversation came up because there are times when you may be talking to a person that you're friendly with, and that person has good standing in your eyes until they say one thing. And they say that one thing, and it completely changes your view of that person.
Perspective is completely different. Like, wow.
Yeah. I was working with somebody, and the topic came around to politics. You know, it's so funny because there used to be a time when at work you would not talk about politics or religion. Now, those governors have been taken off. So in Atlanta, Georgia, for the past year, there have been all these commercials nonstop on YouTube because, you know, they look at your IP address and they target you with commercials based on your region. Or it'd be on social media and on other platforms, or it's on TV commercials. And it was all about these two guys that were running for Senate. It was Herschel Walker, a former football player, and a former pastor named Raphael Warnock, which, you know, I always gave it a sideways look because it's too close to Warlock. It became so normal to see these commercials all the time.
I gotta ask, is he black? I don't understand.
Yes,
I don't recognize Warnock.
Warnock is black. Yeah, so it's two black dudes that were running for state senate. You know, one was Republican, one was Democrat. And I was talking with this older white cat that I work with, and he said it's a loss either way, which I did agree with because, you know, they were both thieves and crooks and liars because
both shitheads.
The only way you're going to get in that job and sustain that type of a occupation is to be a liar. And Raphael Warnock has his own sordid past, beating women and stealing money from churches and stuff.
Damn.
But so did Herschel Walker. You know, he was a woman beater, and, you know, he was a fucking idiot who can't speak well in public. I mean, he just said a bunch of ignorant stuff. I mean, it's not even worth repeating. But the old white man, he said, I wouldn't vote for either one of those bozos. I was fine with that. And then he said, and then Raphael Warnock, you know, he graduated from an HBCU, a historically black college university. And when he said that, man, it lit a fire. And I became so angry. He said, I wouldn't vote for this guy because he's black. What he said was, I wouldn't vote for this guy because he's a graduate of a black college.
Oh, my God.
That shit set me off. Normally, I can just engage and sit there and completely demolish the person. But I didn't because I was so angry. I got so angry, I just walked away. Like, fuck what you saying.
Some of that's betrayal. When you trust somebody and you see this person as...
No, it's not even a person that I trust. It's a person that I deemed as being a cool, civilized person. And then he says some bullshit like that. I'm just like, God, doggy, like this person...
What the fuck?
Yeah, man. Like, okay, so can't dig it. Can't dig it. I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Now you've hit your ceiling. Anything that comes out of your mouth now is going through this filter that you placed there because you said something ignorant.
The big issue that nobody wants to ever admit is that people put a ceiling on you and your abilities, or you as a person. In my role, I'm a union rep. And so people voted for me, but you got to understand, you know, out of 300 people, only like 126 people voted. And I got 86 of those people. So that's a majority, but most people didn't vote. So there's a lot of people that didn't vote for me because I'm a fat black guy and they don't think I can do the job. And then when they get in trouble, what happens is they find out, like during a hearing or during a negotiation, I'm the smartest guy in the room. And they didn't know that. And they're grateful. Or here's the other thing: you'd be surprised how many of these grown men cry.
They prejudged you.
Look, you'd be surprised how many of these guys, these grown men, Caucasian, cry during a hearing.
Are you serious?
When they realize, oh, that what I said I didn't think it was that bad. Or, you know, I think I've had maybe 2 women cry, but 3 guys, adult males cry.
Okay, but see, here's the thing, though. I don't think that has anything to do with white advantage or white privilege. I think that is more related to manipulation because...
Both.
I have seen in a job setting where it was myself and a female coworker. She was black, and we didn't like each other at all. And it was just her. She was just a spoiled brat, and she just wanted to be in control of the situation, and I wasn't going to yield. So then... our supervisor saw this and she called us into the office And she let this chick tell the side of her story first, and she starts crying. And I turn around, I look at her, I'm like, hey, you can stop that right now. Because you weren't talking that tough shit a minute ago.
Yeah.
You was like, you was all puffed up and tough a second ago, but you get in front of this white woman, you want to cry, and you want to, use that to your advantage because you're a woman and you're being emotional. She's supposed to side with you. You've probably been manipulating your parents your entire life with those crocodile tears.
I'm gonna tell you like this. I'm trying to think how many African American males have I represented, and I've represented them, but not in a hearing form. Not actually being fired. And the reason I'm saying that because I don't think I've had maybe one white lady cry, two black girls cry, but like I said, when it hit them like, oh my God, I'm about to be fired. The white dudes, I don't think they were manipulated. I think reality just hit them all at once. That you could not talk yourself out of this, and that the person sitting here does not see your point of view the way you.
But how many people on the panel were white?
Oh, okay. So you have a hearing officer and you have a charging officer. So it's a white guy. I've had one hearing with a white female as a hearing officer, and that's the judge basically. But trust me, they were younger guys,
but they're still grown men.
Yeah. I think when a realization hits that you really messed up, like when you messed up, and for instance, I did represent a black guy one time, but the thing was, I got his job back. Like literally, he went through arbitration, gets his job back, and he doesn't show up for 3 months. Just so. But again, that's the part of me that when that realization hits that the reality in my head and the reality I exist in don't line up. See, for a person who's a minority, black, woman, whatever, that happens to us a lot. We catch it. But when you've been in power, like for instance, one of the guys, he went to a very prestigious high school around here. He went to Creighton Prep, and you know what that is, but anybody else doesn't know. There's like 23,000 a year, or a semester, whatever to go there.
White kids.
Yeah, and so he came at me one time. He's like, "Hey, he read a bunch of these books, Mile, all this stuff, and he's like, hey, what can I do to fix it?" I said, give back your privilege. He said, what do you mean? Every time you didn't get stopped by the police, give that back to me. The fact that you work in the same job as me and you have a high school diploma and I got a college degree, right there. That shows that you can't give that back. And I'm not saying that you could, but don't ask me a question that you can't do anything about. Example, there's somebody at my job who's doing something. And when you hear the term sexual harassment, most people assume that you're is an unwanted sexual advance. But sexual harassment is also mistreating somebody of a different gender. So if you continuously mistreat people of a different gender, that's actually considered sexual harassment. So when you hear the word sexual harassment, you normally think of an unwanted advance. But there's somebody who's being aggressive with different people at my job. And when these women decide to speak up, one of them in particular, they told her, "Oh, he's going through something." Man, her personal life is way worse than his. So that right there, that what you're going through is so much worse than what I'm going through, or because I'm black or because I'm a woman, what I'm going through is dismissed, or, oh man, you used to that shit. This white boy over here, he's not used to that. That's essentially what people say. And these are the status quo. These are the bosses above him. Like, oh no, he's going through something. The idea that what you're going through is so much worse than what I'm going through, or the fact what you're saying is that my norm is always like that. My norm is always fucked up. So you should be used to it. He's not accustomed to that. It's a lot of pressure on him. And I'm like, golly, that's crazy when people around you just start making excuses for you, because I ain't used to it. Because every time I messed up or I came late or I did something, they were like, yeah, he shouldn't be here. The only reason I still got when I first got hired, I forgot to come to work one time. No bullshit. Lady calls me like, hey, where you at? Duct tape, you should have been here at 12. It's 1:30. She said, just get here. Nobody will know. That's how I got there, started working. Nobody knew. Like I said, it's a collective. Most people don't want to realize this, but most of your successes are based on a collective. There are individuals who did claw their way to the top, but even then, They recognize when somebody else contributed to their success, and I can admit when somebody contributed to my success. But there's a lot of people who felt like I don't belong, or I shouldn't be here, or I don't have the ability to negotiate, or I'm this, I'm that. But ain't nobody ever said I half-ass did anything. Ain't nobody said I didn't work. They just don't like the way I do things. So that's really frustrating that when you see somebody else, and again, I had two white males, and one of them, he had more seniority than me, so he bumps me off a job. 2 weeks later, he hits me. I'm walking. He pulls me to the corner. He's crying. He's like, "What's going on?" Like, what do you mean? Because when you see a person cry, you're like, "Oh shit, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, do you know why I bumped you?" I said, "Because you got more seniority." He said, "No, because I always see you walking around talking to people. So I thought you had an easy job." He's like,
Oh
"No."
my God! What?
He said, "No, your job is hard as hell." I said, "No disrespect, but you do realize I graduated from college. You graduated from Job Corps. I'm smarter than you."
What?
Now,
Job Corps? A fucking
the,
Job Corps guy took your job, dude?
okay, let me explain. So Job Corps has jobs that are designed for my specific company, for the railroad. So if you go through Job Corps, they get in the union as these jobs. But once you're in the union, you can bump anybody you're junior. So he was in the union in St. Louis. That building got closed, completely abolished, and they had to come to Omaha. So they get there. Of course, we've been working together for 2 or 3 years. So he sees me walking, always walking, always kicking it. So he figured he must have an easy job. That dude bumped me. And when he bumped me, he was like, "Dude," he said, I thought you had an easy job. That's why I bumped you." Like, "No, I don't have an easy job." He said, "Then how do you walk around?" I'm like, "I'm smarter than you." I said, "You do," his name was Steve. He passed. I said, "Steve Marcy." I said, "Steve, you do realize I'm smarter than you, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then you answered your own question." I walked off. I'm not, you know me. I'm not going to submit to anybody. I'm not going to make them feel better. You bumped me. You took my seniority. It's what it is. But don't think that you're me. Don't think you're on my level because of a title or because you can bump me. You're not. What I'm saying is that people actually have a idea of what reality is. And then when they get introduced to reality, is how you deal with it and how you overcome. That's another thing that bugs me about like how kids are nowadays. And me and you talked about this off the air. Like sometimes you shouldn't discuss a diagnosis with a child because what you're doing is giving them an excuse not to be successful. As a parent, like I said, not every situation is like that. I have one daughter with diabetes. She has diabetes. But me growing up with ADHD, my mom told me, but she didn't tell me. She didn't discuss it because she didn't want to give me an excuse. And the thing is, when I encountered the problems, like, I have a problem reading. My brother knows this. Instead of me using an excuse stopping, she's like, let's confront it together and we'll work our way through it because you have to learn how to get through that. So giving somebody an excuse ain't the best way to go, because what happens is when you meet that barrier, you need to overcome that barrier, and then it's no longer a barrier. But if you sit there and you avoid it every single time, like when I see the wrong letters, when I see the wrong symbols, when I see colors instead, if I sat there like, oh my God, let me go in another room. No, you got to push through. And Dave Chappelle said people have those brittle spirits. People are brittle now. And it's not just because of COVID. I think it was exposed because of COVID. But these motherfuckers is brittle as fuck.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I was working on this reality TV show, and it was called Miss Howard Stern. It was a TV show that I worked on as a camera operator, and there was a guy that was working on the show, and I had to go to this guy to get my paycheck. And so one day I go to get my pay, and I remember it was the time that American Gangster had came out, that Denzel Washington movie about Frank Lucas, who was the protege of Bumpy Johnson. And I went to the office to go get my paycheck from working on this TV show, and there was a guy in there. His name was Josh. I remember Josh, and we started having a small little talk about what's that theater, what are you watching, blah blah blah. And I got into American Gangster. I was like, yeah, it's really good, and it's interesting. And he was like, it's a good movie, but there's no way a black man would talk to white men like that back in the 70s. I said, stop right there. I halted that right in its tracks. I was like, first of all, I don't know where you coming from with this? Like, you understand all the interactions of black people and the psychology of black people and what you think a black man will do with that much, ability or power. But I can tell you firsthand that I have seen these interactions before, and it doesn't have to be a camera recording what's happening or filming what's happening. I've seen black men when I was a small child talk to white men just like the way Denzel did in the movie. And my father was one of those guys, or the guys that my father knew, behaved in the same way. Oh, no, I'm just saying. No, stop. Because by you telling me that, you're telling me that you're describing your worldview. And you
You
think
wanted me
that,
to co-sign on that bullshit.
and
And I'm not
no,
doing
no,
it.
but he had this perception that like black people were these meek, afraid, cowardly creatures until the 1980s. I said, no, the problem is you have a perception that's based on cinema and television.
Mm.
And you think black people are these caricatures that were created by white Jewish writers who sit in a room and, come up with these ideas about what a black person is. Just like the same way that, Good Times, the TV show Good Times, had Jimmy Walker playing JJ, and they would tell him to act more like a coon and, stick his butt out and be ridiculous. Because the funny part is when you talk to or you see the interview with the cast members of Good Time, John Amos in particular, he didn't get it at all. He was like, why is this guy acting like a coon? Like, black folks don't act like that. Like, what is this supposed to be about? And then,
He got fired for it.
yeah, I know, because John Amos was real. You know what I'm saying? That's why. But respect to, Esther Roll for even standing up to make sure that those black kids had a father and they saw that on TV. She's the reason John Amos even had a job on that show. But I say all that to say that when I was a little kid, I saw this movie called Hollywood Shuffle. Hollywood Shuffle.
I was about to go there.
There's
How'd you know? You read my
this
mind.
movie. Please watch this movie. It's so good. This movie was pretty much in living color, the TV show, before that TV show, but it was a movie. And it was a satire on the plight of black actors in Hollywood.
Actors.
And there was this scene in there called Black Acting School. And it's so funny because, it had these people, these white people telling these black actors, no, that's not black enough. Do this, and it was so hyperbolic. It was so over the top.
I ain't be got no weapon.
I ain't be got no weapon.
He's sitting there reading he's like, hey, I don't have a weapon. No, don't say it like that. Say it like this. I ain't be got no weapon.
Right.
That's not black. Yeah, more black. I've been black my whole life. I don't talk like that.
But and then there was that scene toward the end of the movie where Robert Townsend's character is playing somebody in a street crime movie, and they tell him to walk with more jive and stick your ass out, and do this. And he's like, and he came to this realization, he looked around, and all the black people was like, man, don't mess it up for us. He's like, I ain't messing up nothing for y'all. Y'all messing up yourself. And he walked off the set, and he wound up getting a job at the post office, right? At the end.
Shooting a commercial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Shooting a commercial for working at the post office. Because he's
like,
listen, but the point of that was actually, listen, you can get out here, you can sell your soul, or you can just work your ass a regular job and be proud of who you are.
Or you can be an actor and have dignity, and you'll still get acting jobs that are not an embarrassment to you or your people. And the thing was, I remember the big thing about that movie. Remember, he financed. My mom was always on my case. He had good credit. He used his credit cards. I'm like, Ma, I read.
We all know the story. Every struggling young black person knows the story of Robert Townsend financing his movie Hollywood Shuffle with credit cards. Now listen, let's be realistic. He probably did this with about a third of the movie. Okay, he probably paid for craft services, which is food. He probably paid for camera rental and film stock, which is the production half, and paying people very little to do that job. And then he shot a little bit of it, and then he probably got some money from somewhere else. But it's still a noble story, no matter how much of it is true or not.
Well, the bottom line is that since he didn't want to kiss ass, he made his own movie. He became the authority. He became the person in charge, and that's the whole idea that black people are afraid to talk to white people. See, the thing is, talk to your old black relatives. Ain't none of them scared of the Klan. when you talk to them, my family's from Tennessee. Not one of them ever said had a Klan story where they were scared of anything.
But if you watch the movies and you watch TV, everybody's afraid and they're running.
Oh my God, they're coming.
Nope. Or there's this pervasive victim mentality that is MK Ultra into every black person's mind. Like, you can't defend yourself. Oh, don't defend yourself. Call the cops. Don't defend yourself. Call the cops. People wind up dead waiting on the cops to show up.
When we're talking about these different situations, we spoke most recently in the news. These cops that beat up. There's these black cops that beat a black guy to death in Memphis, Tennessee. And the first thing that hit, you got Al Sharpton, you got all these guys talking about it's racist. It's racist.
It's not racist. It's nothing about it's racist because, listen, black people can't be racist to black people because it's the same race. Now, you can be a bigot, you can oppress people, but it's not racism because, hey, let's stick to the definition. It's using a power structure to oppress people who are a different race than yours.
The only reason I disagree with you on one part.
Get the fuck out of here.
Hear it out. Black cops can't be racist, and we know that for a fact. We grew up with motherfuckers stopping you and remember Ice Cube? Black police showing out for the white cop. That is a racist power structure because you're part of that bullshit. But was this that same situation? This was corruption at its finest.
That's all it was. But see, there's a backstory to this whole thing. Go ahead and drop the backstory.
Look, so everybody who's watched the video and they have, body cam and all that shit, when you watch the video, they tell you this black guy that got beat up
was driving recklessly.
What they told you was he's a FedEx worker. And so he's a FedEx worker.
Maybe he was driving recklessly because he was being chased. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was driving recklessly because he was being followed by the police. And by the way, one of the cops' ex-girlfriend works at FedEx. This guy was talking to his ex-girlfriend. This is the backstory that all the people in Tennessee.
Okay, don't say talking to because everybody people don't know what you say when you say talking to.
Yeah, the old people courting,
flirting with, trying to,
He might have been dating her. We don't know, but all we know is that he was having contact with one of those cops' ex-girlfriend. So this beatdown, was it a coincidence? I think not. Are you saying that they would have not did a white guy that way? I don't know. We don't know, but we do know one thing: that Scorpion unit was disbanded because of this shit right here. And who knows, that they might have been doing a good job in the community. But for whatever reason, they decided to beat this guy up, all because he was banging the homeboy's ex-girl. That's not fair. That's some corruption at its finest. Police brutality is a symptom of police corruption. When a cop feels like they can't be touched, when a cop feels justified in doing some shit that you can't tell nothing, yeah, of course they're going to tell you that he was driving recklessly. He probably was trying to lose the motherfucker.
This is the thing, though. This is the thing. This is how stupid these guys were. If y'all going to do dirt, and let's tell her what it is. That was a hit. One guy had a mission to go and beat up or kill another guy. Now, listen, let's all keep it real. He probably had some thoughts about killing the guy. He probably really did. Because if you're going to go that far to beat him like that, you probably thought about killing him beforehand. So why would you do it in a police uniform? I mean, listen, let's keep it all the way street because that's who we are. If you really going to do some dirt, you want to move in silence and be as stealthy as possible. So why would you do it with the light? Hold on, after the George Floyd thing and the BLM, conquest and all this nonsense, you would be as discreet as possible in beating the shit out of somebody. You wouldn't do it in public. Listen, man, we all know how to catch somebody slipping. If you from the hood, you know how to catch them. Listen, if you ever had your ass beat, if you've been in fights, if you jumped somebody, if you had beef with somebody, you know how to sit in the cut and watch a person and wait for the right moment to run up on them and beat that ass. They didn't do that. Instead, they hid behind a blue shield and used that blue shield to bludgeon this guy with.
Look, they hid in plain sight. What they made it look like was this guy was resisting arrest, and we had to do this, and we thought we would get off.
The problem is that their follow through, their execution was piss poor because they just pulled him right out of the car. They didn't like walk up on the car and says, "Get out of the car." No, they yanked him out the car. They didn't read him his rights. They didn't say anything to him about why he was being pulled over. They were so cranked up and full of adrenaline to ready to do this thing and get it over with. They blew their wad before it was time.
Well, here's my problem. When the first thing I heard, they were interviewing a black cop. He said, "This is why we need training." You do not need training. This was not an accident. They were there to whoop this nigga's ass. That's what it was about. They were gonna whoop his ass. If they were smart, they would have had him handcuffed. They would have made it look like they were arresting him. They would have set him on the court. They would have did the whole thing. No, this is pure adrenaline. This is pure arrogance. This is pure ego. Who the fuck do you think you are fucking with my bitch? That's what this was. And me and my boys, we gonna fuck you up. And trust me, the kid didn't fight back because they're cops. See,
he ran because he sensed his life was in danger.
And he died from it. Look, what we're saying is that there is racism, there is corruption. These are all symptoms of police corruption. Police brutality, racism are symptoms of police corruption. And this is pure corruption. No, don't get me wrong. If you want to pose the question, would they have whooped a white boy like that? And I'm going to tell you, I do not know.
No.
Because
they wouldn't do. No.
So if we're saying no, they wouldn't have.
If he attacked them, yes, but in the exact same manner, pull him out of the car and just start beating him to death.
No. So yeah, that's what. If you have your racist component, that's your racist component. But this ain't racism. This is pure arrogance. And the thing is, we see this shit whenever they have these special units. You see this shit. I shouldn't say every time. Many of these special units. These crime prevention units, these gang units, they get disbanded because going back to L.A. and Rampart.
Because they're operating outside the law to begin with.
Yes. Anybody who's black knows this, but a lot of white folks don't know this. Once you get on that gang list, once that gang unit puts you on that list, do you know that's for life? You can't petition to get off it. Like, hey, I'm 30-something years old now. I'm 40 years old now. Take me off the gang? Nah, we don't feel like we should. So this is that burden. This shit we're talking about. This I can't fuck with it. I'm trying to tell you, like this, I can't dig it because this is the stuff that we're telling you that we're dealing with. The problem is labeling something like this racist, and then when a real racist thing, it's just like rape. I'm not saying women aren't raped, but I'm saying if a woman screams rape, it's not true. Then all of a sudden, all these other women are scrutinized who have real situations that really need to be addressed, and they need to be protected. They can't be protected all because everybody's going to harken back to that one time somebody called wolf. Somebody was this situation has a racist component to it, but this ain't racist. This is corruption, and this is what happens when cops think they can't be touched. Look, we see this shit. Read these articles. Remember that cop in New Orleans, the one they called RoboCop? The FBI was following him, had that woman out there in the street, and he killed. They were watching. They said we weren't set up yet. He kills the witness. Y'all supposed to be protecting her. Why do you think black folks don't like talking to police? It's not because we scared. It's like the fact the police can't protect us or the police are in on it. So why would you want to? So look, I'm not a victim. Black folks, I tell you to arm yourself because look, I'm going to give you an example of how stupid I am. So there was a shooting up here. There was a spree shooter went off in the Target by my house. You know that, right? Did you see that article?
No.
Well, he walked 4 days ago. He walks into Target, I think it was Monday, just starts shooting with the AR. Cops take him out because it's in West O. Cops got there immediately. He didn't shoot. He didn't hit nobody. I'm sitting there. I'm at home. I find out about it. I'm like, damn. I'm like 2 blocks away. How come I couldn't be at Target right now? I've been wanting to shoot somebody. I got 2 guns on me right now. That's how messed up my mind. I want to defend myself. I want
Stop,
to.
stop, 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 stop. You're at Target. You're getting out of the car. You hear gunfire. What do you do?
Uh, okay, if I'm going into Target, I'm gonna get back in the car. But if I'm in Target, shit,
Hold on a second.
I'm.
Hold on. Wait. What did you just say? You said if you're going into Target, you can get back in the car?
I might. It depends on the situation. See, here's what happened. I know that one of my friends, the guy you met, the guy I do business with, he had lent a car to one of our associates, and his wife was driving it. Do you know three women jumped in the car with her? There's blood in the car from them trying to get away. People were trying to get away. If I'm walking in, I got my kids, I'm getting back in the car. If I'm walking in by myself, yeah, I go in there. I got my gun on me. That's what I got it for. It depends on the situation. If I'm by
Are
myself,
you
yeah, I
going to
go
go
in.
to the gunfire? Are you going to listen for it and go toward it?
Yeah, of course.
Gun drawn.
Yeah, that's what you train for.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, if I got my kids, I got my wife or something, uh, like I said, it was so bad. People were jumping in anybody's car. Like, hey, can I hide in your car? Yeah, but I personally think it was suicide by cop. The guy bought the gun 4 days ago. He walks in there shooting. He didn't shoot anybody. I think it was suicide by cop. I think the guy didn't have the heart to shoot himself, so he created a situation where they had to shoot him. That's sad, but I think that's what happened.
White dude?
Yep.
Mm.
So look,
How long was he there before the cops showed up?
I told you they had to be there immediate. How did they get there that fast? That's because it's West O. They care about people out here. He walked in and the cops got there right the fuck away.
Well, that's one thing about the cops in West Omaha. They show up pretty fucking fast.
Oh yeah, as soon as they got the call, they were there. They were on it. So look, when we tell you these stories, we have shootings in North Omaha because that's where the black people are at. They don't respond that fast. They don't catch a motherfucker. They don't solve shit. You know, it takes 2 years for them to solve.
Is Dion's brother still a detective?
Mm-mm. His younger
His younger brother.
Yeah,
His younger brother was his younger brother was the one that found Carlos when he died.
Oh no shit. I know he's a cop. Last time I spoke to him, he was supposed to retire, and he was upset about something. And I told him about the job. I'm like, look, you can get a job at the railroad. It's gonna pay you 150, maybe 200. Hell, it pays you even more if you got your own dog. He's like, and, you know, but he was
your own dog.
Yeah, if you have a drug dog, they pay you 20,000 more.
Oh, you talking about working as a cop or
Yeah,
security for the railroad?
yeah. No, it's a railroad police. It's not security. It's railroad police.
Mm.
The railroad has its own police department.
Mm-hmm.
And
What do they do?
Arrest drug dealers, find drugs on trains, do reports when people get in fights.
I mean, I'm asking you on behalf of the audience because these people don't know about this shit, dude.
Yeah, oh yeah. Railroad has its own police department. Like I said, now there are like bodyguards for the CEO of the company. That's a different job altogether. But they both pay like 150, 200,000 a year. So it depends. But
did he ever hit you up?
Oh, I spoke to him. What happened? I was working security during College World Series and ran into him, and that was the last time I spoke. It's been 4 years. It was pre-COVID.
You worked security at the baseball stadium?
No, I work security at some of the areas around. We know some rich people, and our friends know rich people, and they'll hire me, give me $30-$40 an hour just to watch their stuff. So, okay. Yeah. You know, I'm not throwing people out, and I'm sitting there making sure nobody, because people know it's such a big thing down there, and people make a lot of money. So as long as they give me,
what's the big thing down there? What's smash and grab?
They climb the fence and start distilling liquor, or it can be any number of things. It's so much money out there. It's ridiculous. So much money. What
are you talking about? Out where?
Downtown is where Rosenblatt ain't there no more. So it's Ameritrade Field downtown, and that whole area becomes like a whole city pavilion.
Okay. You can stop. All right. So let me describe what happens in Atlanta. So Atlanta, we used to have the Brave Stadium, which was in the heart of the city, right in the middle of downtown, right next to the interstate. And so what you would have is all these hustlers would show up, and all these homeless panhandlers would show up, and the white people would get bussed in, or they come in, they would drive to the train station, like the farthest train station out, and they would park their car there, and they would get on the train station. These white people would get on the train with liquor in their hand, right? And the cops would not say a word to them, but let black folks turn around, get on with red Solo cups full of liquor, and it's a problem. So Atlanta has always had this double standard. So
that's that tourism. They care about that tourism money.
But see, this was weekly tourism, but you see it all the time. You see it's always a problem. But it always felt like this, this invasion. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, here come the rich white folks from the suburbs. That kind of thing. But then the annoying part about it was just the homeless people. See, homeless people always fuck shit up. Seriously, I'm not bullshitting you. And there are regular listeners to this show. Freebird TJ, I'm talking to you, and Chris Bo, I'm talking to you. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The homeless people in Atlanta are on Freaknik all the time. It's Freaknik mode for homeless people all the time in the city of Atlanta, because they have been, whispering through the grapevine to other homeless people in other cities, hey, man, you need to go to Atlanta. The same way young black people back in the 90s were like, yo, Atlanta is a spot. That's it. You need to go down there. And they were right. They get down here. It's warm for about 10 months out of the year. You know what I'm saying? And they can get money easy. You can panhandle. You can put up tents and all a bunch of nonsense. And there's all different types of opportunities to get money all around the city just begging, okay? And so I was talking with this guy this morning. I was downtown. And there's like this mall downtown, and it's underground under the street. It's called Peachtree Center. So I was in Peachtree Center for some business. And I see this old man walk up to me. He's like, say, bro, you know where the bathroom is around here? I was like, yeah, man, you go down there, make a right, and make a left, and there it is. And he's like, and so he was an old black man, and he took off he had a mask on, coronavirus mask, and he took it off, and he had no teeth in his mouth. But he had an interesting story to tell me, but it was just hard to look in his mouth because the phlegm in his mouth was so thick. Listen. The phlegm in his mouth was so thick that, you know how like when a person's talking, they had like that vertical line of spit in their mouth.
Like mum rah. Remember
Listen,
mum rah?
he had the mum rah, bro. He had the fucking mum rah. But it wasn't clear. It was brown phlegm. The ever living dude. And he kept talking. I just kept looking away. I was like, I was like, yeah, bathroom over there, homeboy. And we started talking about, and we got on the topic of homeless people. And he's like, look here, man. I'm from Harlem. You understand? And I ain't never, ever been afraid of my life in New York City, ever. I was there before Giuliani and all that in the 80s, baby. And he said, but then I came down here and these homeless motherfuckers down here is ridiculous. They off the damn chain.
They're everywhere.
Dude. But they just emboldened. You know what I'm saying? To like this dude, all this shit and get out of pocket and stuff, right? So I started walking away. The dude keep following me. I was like, the bathroom is over there. He's like, yeah, let me just finish telling you real quick. And this mum rah, thick brown phlegm, vertical, is not breaking. Okay? Like, it's just like, yeah. It was like, he had anime, cartoon, Thundercat spit in his mouth, and it was brown, my dude. Listen.
Remember that girl in grade school?
Listen.
They had the green snot coming out of her nose. Just sat there.
Listen.
She would talk to you. You're like,
dude, it was on that level, but like a notch above worse. And his teeth was like so far apart, like you can take your finger and put your index finger in between each tooth. Okay. And they look like
jack-o'-lantern.
Yes, but they look like somebody took like Captain Crunch and like dipped it in some hot chocolate. Okay.
Remember Yuck Mouth? Remember that nigga?
Yes,
He had a tooth like that. He had a yuck mouth tooth.
dude.
Like,
But on top of that, he had the bad teeth, and he had the mum ra spit in his mouth, and he had a mask on, which means like you are smelling your own shit, dude. Like,
look, look,
first of all, masks were an equalizer. I'm gonna say, for all this nonsense during the pandemic, masks were a godsend because it made all the people with halitosis realize how bad their breath stink. Go ahead.
look. I used to work with a lady. I told you this years ago. She had like rat teeth. Her teeth were all jagged and broken off. It looked like either broken glass or rat teeth. And she would talk to you, and I would have to ask her to repeat herself 3 or 4 times. She's like, "Oh, you don't hear well?" Like, no, it's not that. It's that once you see her teeth, you get distracted. Like, God damn, how do you chew? Have you? I hope you don't suck dick. That's like a mouthful of circumcision. It looked like fucking razor blades in her mouth, and you just get distracted by her fucked up teeth. And I'm like, it's like, God, dog it. And she would talk to you. Like, hey, can you repeat yourself, please? Because you would get distracted.
Dude, I mean, like the entire time, this guy talked for like 60 seconds, but the entire time they talked.
It was like an hour in your mind.
that vertical line did not break. That line of spit from the top of his mouth, the roof of his mouth to the bottom.
It was a wizard.
Did not break. And I'm like, oh, it's brown, it's brown.
Oh my God. Are you chewing tobacco?
Like, oh, it was so bad, dude. Oh, so bad.
Look, one of the city councilmen up here.
Hold on. But I brought this up because, you know, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of homeless people are running game. And I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. But I'll come back to this.
I was going there. No. They actually are in a crew. Okay. So the city councilman here, you know, we know his son. He's telling me like, hey, it's a hustle. And the only reason I agree with him, when we were kids, you had homeless people downtown, like 6 of them, because we live in a small city, big town. So you had about 6 of them, and then you had the 2 like shelters, and the people went to those shelters, and they were full. But now, when I start seeing homeless people in the hood, you see. That's how you know these motherfuckers don't know that. Because black folks, we don't give you shit. In fact, it's a black man out there, right? It's homeless people with signs asking for money. It's a black man next to him with a sign saying, get a job. He's like,
are you serious?
Hiring. Yes. He's telling them where they're hiring at. So when you see 2 or 3 homeless people, when you get off the interstate, when you get off the expressway by Hamilton, by my church, you got 2 or 3 homeless people sitting there. That's not a spot for homeless people.
That's new. That never used to happen.
Yeah, it's been a couple years, since you've been gone. But yes, that's 4 years old. You understand what I'm saying? That's nobody in that area has money to give you. And as he said, yeah, these guys, they all live in a van. They travel. They set up in different spots. They make their money. They put their money together, and then they go on to the next spot. So when you say they're running game, they really are running game.
Oh, okay. Now see, that contrasts to what a hobo was.
Yeah, see, a hobo
would get on the railroad trains and travel. But see, the thing is, hobos would work, and hobos actually had a union. Did you know that?
I knew they worked. I know they would go. They were seasonal workers, is what they were. And they just didn't. They didn't have a place to stay, but they had hobo camps. They would go there. Then they would follow. They would follow the work.
And they also had a hobo union, which means shit. All that they would just collectivize. They would get together in groups to protect themselves. Yeah, that was real shit, dude. Like,
shit. Look,
but see, the funny thing is though, around 2007, there were these kids. They called them the boxcar kids, which was basically like, the millennial version of hobos. And I don't know if you've ever seen them. I mean, you work for the railroad. Maybe you might have seen them, like if you've ever been out, into the field. But what they were these white kids. And they would travel around, and normally they had a dog with them. And they always got on dark brown, and like gray colored clothes. And it ought to be like 2 dudes and a girl, or like a bunch of dudes, and they got like just matted, like just horrible looking hair, right? And they look like if you threw a bucket on them, like all this dirt would just roll off of their bodies.
Look like their hair looked like a sheep butt. You know what I'm saying? Just like fucking matted and everything else.
Yeah.
Look, but if you want to travel, the railroad is the way to go. That's the problem is.
But
that's why
the only problem is You can't do it in yards because the bulldog get you. You know what I'm saying? And the railroad bulldog is out there to prevent people from hopping on the trains.
Look, that's why they have railroad police, because they have murderers in those places. There was that one Mexican guy that was murdering people, and he would kill somebody, jump on the track, and literally you'll be over 200 miles away in the next 6-7 hours, and nobody, And the thing about a train track, ain't no road next to it. It's not like you can. Back in the day, some of the highways would run along the train tracks. They're not right next to it, but they were, so you could actually catch a train if you wanted to. Now the train goes through the middle of areas, and it's a road next to it for you to access the train, but you couldn't catch it. If a train gets going, you can't catch it. If it goes around a mountain pass, you just screwed. And so, like I said, that's why these hobos did that. They knew the direction. They knew where the train was going. They know where to jump on, jump off. The Missouri Pacific. You heard Richard Pryor always joke about it with Mudbone and Mopac from Missouri to the Pacific Ocean. That's how they did it. So, like I said, when people talk about they're going through something, you got literal motherfuckers jumping on trains to survive. You ain't going through shit. When you try to tell me that, hey, I'm upset about this, you got motherfuckers risking their lives just to stay alive. Nah, man, nobody feels sorry for you. And when you sit here and you get beat to death because of somebody because you want to talk to somebody, because you want to date somebody, and you get beat to death by the police, trust me, your pressure ain't like my pressure. Don't ever think that it's the same. And don't sit here and when I say you're brittle or fragile, take it personal, because I'm being serious. Some of y'all need to toughen up. Now, when we talk about these things, like our personal experiences, everybody has a different one. And I don't want you to ever feel sorry for me. We're just telling you because it should happen, not because we want sympathy. It's like, when you go through this shit at work, when you work your ass off and you think you when I first started working in corporate America, you feel good. You got a degree. You get this job. The first job I had was actually in L.A. It was a foreign currency buyer. I quit. I showed up one day for work. Then I got the job I got now. And you're dressed up. You feel good about yourself. And you're walking in the parking garage, and you're walking in, and these white people see you walking in, and then they turn around and click, beep, beep. They turn their alarm on the car. It's like,
listen, I put this suit on just so I can sneak up on your ass and rob you.
It's like that's a nigger reminder. That's a crime reminder. So when you see me, all you see is criminal. Even though I work higher up in the building than you, even though I'm making more money than you, even though I probably have more education than you, but when you see me, all you see is, oh man, that's a crime reminder. There's black people in this building. They could rob me, or a black person could. But when you see other white people, you didn't feel like you had to click your alarm. So are you clicking your alarm because you forgot, or you clicking your alarm because you saw me and you wanted to just let me know, oh, I got a burglar alarm. You can't take my car, nigga. So when we tell you this, how about, I remember being in college, me and you were in touch at this time. I'm talking to you. I'm driving, and I'm in a real nice neighborhood, and the white person sees you in the car next to them, and they lock their door. And they do that shit obvious, lock the doors, like, so you can see it. And you're like, first thing first, the clicker is down there. You could have clicked it without me seeing, but you want me to see that. So I'm thinking to myself, I got my own car, so I'm going to drive both cars, lady. Hey, white man, I'm going to drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bust you in the head, take your car, drive it half a block, come back and get my car, drive it 2 blocks, come back and get your car, drive it 3 blocks, come back and get my car.
Listen. So I remember we were like maybe 11 or 12, and I think you went to D.C. to go visit a relative. And we were watching a music video on BET, and I think the song was called Hustler, right? Mm-hmm. And you said something about, you said there's people that ride around in these nice cars, and they got nice watches, and they hang their arm outside the window.
I'm a terrible person. I'm sorry, y'all.
Listen. And he said there's groups of kids that run around and like they wait at stoplights and they run up and snatch that dude's watch off his arm. Yep. That sounds like some Washington D.C. shit, though.
That's some DC shit.
Yeah.
Because they're quick with it. They was quick with it.
Well,
I went to go see Kenny. I know what? You know what? I went to New York and we drove to D.C. from New York. That's what we were talking about. I remember. Look. Like I said, I don't want nobody to feel sorry for me or anything like that. We're not saying that. All I'm saying is make sure that when you're trying to tell me that you're having a difficult day, that you know that my regular day it's probably worse than your worst. My, so you need to have that consideration for me. Or how about this? Toughen up, work through it, figure this shit out. Help other people when you can. That's another thing that as a rep that I see a lot where I got a new hire that wanted a particular job, and he goes to the management because it's a management job. He's telling them all this different stuff, and they said, "Oh yeah, fuck you." they wouldn't. So he comes to me. I'm like, "Why don't you come to me first?" Well, I'm like, "You should have came to me first." And I show him where in our agreement where that job is part of my agreement. They got to give you an interview, and so I give him the interview. He gets the job. Do you know that he didn't tell any of his other classmates or anybody else about it until they let him leave? Then he started telling. I'm like, wow, that's chicken shit. So somebody helps you, but just to make sure that you got the job, you didn't want to help nobody else. You didn't want no competition. That's some bullshit, dude. Like, if you're as good as you say, you should not be afraid of competition.
Yeah, but
That's just,
you got people that want to use privilege, though, man. You know what I mean? Or they just spoil, like this cat you were telling me about. That he talks down to this black female co-worker, and he gets away with it because of this privilege or this advantage that him and maybe his twin brother have had their entire lives because they've been spoiled brats.
he's going through. Like I said, I know the guy. He's a hard worker, but whatever
But
his
that but
hang
that
up.
don't mean nothing. That means nothing because
Yeah,
listen, all that this is the whole point of this show is because you can be this person, but then you go and you do this or you say that, and you start you start displaying these traits that are very negative. You know what I'm saying? And then that whole credibility goes out the window.
Roscoe, tell the truth. What people don't ever want to believe that all this can occupy one person. One person can be an asshole, and one person could be a savior at the same time. One person could be hardworking, one person could be lazy at the same time. That's the dichotomy of you can do both. Like, hey, he works really hard at his job, but he can treat people like shit. That's not cool. You can occupy the same body, but when you need to be a complete person. You need to be an entire person. You need to work at everything and get better at the stuff and learn from your mistakes and grow. But some people, they can't grow. Or some people, well, nobody wants to ever admit that some shit that happened to that nigga in grade school is a shit that's probably still fucking with him. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like literally I got stories from grade school that, yeah, they torment me. I'm like, oh man, I would never fuck with that kind of person because like, you hold that shit, and then you find out, like, hey, I should have let that shit go years ago. You aren't going to sit here and fuck somebody else's career up because you're having a bad day. You're going to sit here and fuck somebody's life up because they're messing with your ex. You're going to sit here and fuck somebody's life up. So that's what you got to understand is that, yeah, you got to be a complete person, and you need to check yourself. You need to recognize that your behaviors aren't healthy, and that you could damage somebody else. Hurt people. That's a fucking excuse. Hurt people should help heal people because they were hurt. And you got to heal yourself before you can heal anybody else.
Okay, but see, the problem is people repeat that saying without adding something to the end of that.
Exactly. They don't add to the,
They
make
just
it
say
like,
that's the way it is, and that's what they're saying when they repeat that term. That's just the way it is. Hurt people. That's just the way it is. And like,
yeah, you're making a cycle. It should not be a cycle. That should be a straight line. It should have happened to you. You should learn
or
from
you
it.
can say hurt people break the cycle.
Yes, hurt. Yeah, intelligent people break the cycle because I don't want a circle. Everything doesn't need to be a circle. Some shit should be a linear. And when you encounter this shit, yeah, it fucks with you for a while, but then you get through it. And if you see it someplace else, talk to them. Like one of the things that people like, hey man, like you really are, you really do help people. You really have these conversations. I'm like, that's because I can tell you what I've been through. I can see some shit in somebody else. One of the guys I had when I was a manager had a problem with drugs, and so I was friends with him before I became a manager. I took him out one time to a strip club, white guy, dorky white guy, and my homeboy was with us. And literally, this guy he says some awkward shit, and he says, "I'm about to go to my car and do heroin. I'll be right back." I'm like, "Excuse me?" I've in my whole life, I've never heard anybody say that to me before. He comes back 26 minutes later. He was a different person. And I'm like, oh, he was like suave. He was much more relaxed. And I'm like, Golly, I've never had anybody tell me they were going to do
But see,
heroin.
that's the whole thing is that he needs that social lubricant. Like he
Oh
needs
yeah, oh
that
yeah.
thing, that buffer, because
He's a man.
he has no swag naturally.
Oh,
Because
no, he doesn't.
he
He
does
doesn't.
not walk around with the ability to speak to women or engage with people or just be cool.
He is a follower. He's a moon. He's not the sun. He doesn't have his own light, and I get that. But short time later, when I was a manager, I recognized he was going through some shit, and I said, "Look, you need to put yourself in the program." And I said, I get it. I said, sometimes shit hurts every day, and at some point in time, you don't want to hurt anymore. And so then you try to find something to anesthetize that, and that doesn't work because that the anesthesia is only temporary, and you're trying to make a temporary thing a permanent thing, and you can't do that. So you need to get some damn help for you and your daughter. You know, I laid it on the line, and like, so he's like, yeah, man. You know, he said you were one of the few people that didn't make fun of me. I'm like, yeah, cool. He got fired he got fired for being stupid. Then he got arrested for a meth lab. He had a meth lab in his apartment. But that came later.
Heroin and meth.
Yeah, the meth came later because he had got fired for he played a joke on somebody, and they tried to fire that guy, and they pulled the tape. And you got to understand that when you joke with trains, you're joking with interstate commerce. So literally, this train is going from Arkansas to Texas or Oklahoma or something. So when the guy played the joke on the other guy, it caused a big problem. So
Hold
they
on.
fired him.
So what kind of joke did he do?
It's okay. This is a
Give me
dispatch.
the short version.
Oh no, there's no short version. So he called. So I call a train on duty. He calls in pretending to be the crew and said, "Hey, you fucked us up. You didn't put us on the wrong train. Take me off that goddamn train." So the guy he swaps 2 or 3 crews around and puts the crews all on the wrong trains. Yes, and so when the guy calls back, let him know he was joking, it was already too late. And so they ended up trying to fire the black guy. They pulled the tape to realize that it was the other guy, and he had just came back from rehab, and so they fired him because he played a joke. And so then, of course, now you get back from rehab. You thought you're doing well. You lose your job of 20-something years, lose your pension, and so then he decided meth was the way to go. He was Walter White before Walter White, so this is before Breaking Bad. But yeah, so like I said, you can't play that kind of joke. You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
That goes back to, like I said, I can't dig. I would never think of doing that. I wouldn't even consider that a joke. So, but that tell
Well, that's because he knew that he can get away with the shit.
Yes. When people say white privilege, sometimes like we have these racial terms, and again, people throw them around. This is racist, but there is a such thing. It's white privilege, male privilege. Even when Bill Burr was talking about white women acting like they weren't part of it, he said he was pointing out the fact that don't act like you weren't there at the lynching. Don't act like you had nothing to do with the oppression of black people. That all of a sudden that you're woke now and your sins are forgiven, even though that you still benefit from them. That's the shit that people don't want to acknowledge or address. You're still benefiting from that shit. So if you want to repent, then don't accept that currency. Throw that shit the fuck away. Earn the shit on your own. Help somebody. Make love, not war. Recognize that sometimes that you don't have to agree with everybody. People are not going to agree with you all the time. And if they don't agree with you, there's no reason to be mad at them. Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Look, the big thing on my mind is this whole Balenciaga shit that motherfuckers keep glancing
all right. Disney is partnering with Balenciaga in Balenciaga's 2023 campaign. Now, people are all like, "Oh, how could Disney do this?" Because what people don't realize, these deals are made like months and years in advance. And this was probably made a year ago, but they were waiting, to do it at the right time. And which would lead me to wonder, did Disney's executives not examine the current campaign that was a 2022 one that had to do with child bondage and BDSM and, pedophilia images? And it's like, Disney has enough power and money to retract this because they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And
They would
so
survive without them. They could
they
survive
don't
without
need Balenciaga. So
Right.
why do they want to maintain this relationship with something that is radioactive?
Well, here's the deal. So again, people who don't know, but if you when you look at this camera shoot, they had yellow tape, like yellow police tape with Balenciaga spelled wrong with two AAL.
And there's also a white document. There's a document on the table underneath that tape. And
from
what
a
that
court
document
case.
is from a court case.
It's of a pedophile who's in court right now, that kind of thing. And here's the issue with Balenciaga. When you spell it Balenciaga,
You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing,
it's,
because those photo shoots, you got to understand, those people are meticulous with those photo shoots.
oh,
Nothing about it is sloppy.
crack. Oh no, that's not an accident. And what I was going to say is when you look at Balenciaga, that's actually the god Baal. Remember from the Bible, the biblical
Baal worship.
Yes, it's Baal is king. That's what it's saying. But Balenciaga in
See,
old
okay,
Latin.
what people got to understand is, like, if you use the word Satan worshiper, people will just gloss over and be like, oh, it's these, like, these sexual creeps and like weird people who dress up in trench coats. No. What you got to understand is that is the Walmart version of the darkness. Yep. Because that is the stuff they put out front to deflect, to hide, behind. Because really, it's what's going on is several umbrellas down from Satanism is Baal worship, okay, and Mithras cults, the cult of Mithras, and all these different deities, and Baphomet, and all this nonsense. Those are, and they become more and more intense the further down you go in the umbrellas. But so finally, they put the Baal worship out there, thinking people aren't smart enough
to recognize.
Yes. That's what it was. They didn't think that the public was smart enough to sleuth their way through this and figure out, like, this is some real pagan child worship bullshit.
Look, here's my issue, your issue, and somebody else said it, but we were already talking about it. I saw this white guy. He was breaking it down. He said, look, you right now, this cancel culture, you're canceled. And I'm going to tell you why. You can sit here and find an athlete who tweeted something when they were in high school that was racist or sexist, or you have congressmen who touched a girl's breast in high school. I'm not saying he's right, but you'll sit here and kill that motherfucker's career. But you can't kill Balenciaga. You can't all these actors and all these. It shows you that they all belong to fucking Hollywood, and Hollywood ain't a good place. Hollywood could tell me that I need gun control. Hollywood could tell me how to raise my kids. Hollywood could tell me that transgender, LSBT, whatever is okay. But you don't.
But when it comes to kids, nobody gives a shit.
You're not going to cancel Balenciaga though. In fact. Prime example, when T.I. was confronted with it, this rapper, he's like, I got to do more research. He said, T.I. do research? You ain't did research on nothing else? But you got to do research on Balenciaga? When we're telling you, like, look at the photo shoot. Like, no. What it is that once you're rich and famous, you're owned by that motherfucking beast. And that beast don't let you go easy. And that beast tells you what you can and can't say. And that's the crazy. I saw this basketball player who said he was friends with Colin Kaepernick, but he had spoke out about China. He said, Colin Kaepernick, stop taking my calls. He said, you can't speak out against China. He said, I thought we had freedom of speech, but nah, not till you say certain things. What I'm telling you is, it's funny. Cancel culture is for people that we don't like. It's for the little guy. It's for that one comedian that says something out of the ordinary. It's for that. But when it comes to these big corporations, when it comes to all that money in China, and their people are starving, and you have all that shit going on over there, but you don't cancel that. You'll take their money gladly. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Balenciaga. So you mean to tell me we can't cancel them, that we can't boycott them to where they don't exist anymore?
No, man. Can't dig it. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.